Welcome to the amazing world of automobiles, where we explore the rich and sometimes quirky history of the machine that changed the world. Cars have got bigger, faster, safer, gone to more places, entered more races and worn more faces as the years have rolled by. Old warriors of battles long since won or lost are revered, harking back to a time when battle gladiators fought the road, generation of heroes in fantastical machines will be the same, harnessing today's speed and measuring their victories and defeats in fractions. They will go to faraway places and hold their races, as their fathers and grandfathers have done before them, winning everything. It's the only thing, even if no one's watching. In this episode of The Amazing World of Automobiles, we showcase the greatest races and the amazing places that helped shape the motor vehicle for over a century. Man is a competitive animal. Almost as soon as the motor car was invented, over a century ago, people were working out how and where to race them. Men and women from all over the globe have pitched their wits, their strength and their courage against the clock, each other and the racetrack to be the quickest, the fastest and first. In the early days it was marathon events between cities like the 123-kilometre Paris to Rouen event of 1894, which followed the route of the first major bicycle race run 25 years earlier. Teams raced in the Gordon Bennett Trophy Series in 1898 and saw the beginnings of national team colours: green for Britain, red for Italy and blue for France. Son of the founder of the New York Herald Tribune, James Gordon Bennett offered an international motor racing trophy which was to be contested by teams of 3 cars. Every part of the cars had to be made in the country of origin. Turn-of-the-century racers were perched up high on their vehicles, which was good, as the dust or mud of the unmade roads of the day made steering even more of a hit-and-miss affair than the primitive engineering. In 1903, the race from Paris to Bordeaux and Madrid was abandoned when drivers and spectators died. The outcry forced organisers to close roads to other traffic during races. Without motorsport, Monte Carlo would still be Monte Carlo, Indianapolis would still be Indianapolis, but Le Mans would just be a small, sleepy rural French village. The 24-hour sports car race held there each June defines the town like no other event anywhere else in the world. And because of the 24-hour, the world knows Le Mans. Long before the 24-hour, the first French Grand Prix took place on a 64-mile circuit based at Le Mans in 1906. This was before the concept of a closed racetrack, and cars were raced on convenient public roads, which were usually, but not always, closed to other traffic. The 24-hour of Le Mans was first run in May 1923 on a 17-kilometre course, the brainchild of 3 local motor racing officials. Originally planned to be a 3-year event, with the winner being the car which could go the furthest distance over 3 consecutive 24-hour races, this idea was abandoned in 1928, and overall winners were declared for each single year, depending on who covered the furthest distance in 24 hours. The race quickly became a favourite summer holiday destination, and car makers realised the advertising value of winning a race that lasts a whole day and a whole night. The first few races were won by Frenchmen in French cars, but British Bentley drivers were soon winning in cars that legendary car maker Ettore Bugatti described as the fastest lorries in the world. Wealthy aristocratic playboys like Sir Henry Birkin and Dr. Benjafield, and the South African diamond dealer Wolf Bonato, raced their Bentleys for fun and won before a new breed of professional drivers working as the racing team manager for the Italian Alfa Romeo squad. Elegant Italian cars won consistently in the early 1930s. The Second World War halted motorsport around the world, and it was a decade until racing resumed at Le Mans in 1949. The traditional start saw drivers run across the road and jump into their cars before starting them up and roaring off. But increasingly this became impractical. Improved driver safety relies on a harness with tightly fastened safety belts, and increasingly sophisticated cars have a complex starting sequence. Feeling this type of start was unsafe, in this 1969 event, first-timer Jackie Ickx walked across the track while his competitors ran. Although nearly hit by a faster car, Ickx took the time to fasten his safety belts before pulling away. Sadly, the first lap of the race saw privateer John Wolfe killed in an accident, while Ickx would go on to win. Very special cars. Originally it was an event which attracted a few factory teams and lots of wealthy amateurs, but gradually the rising cost of racing and the level of competition forced out the privateers. After the Second World War had levelled much of Europe and the fortunes of wealthy aristocrats, motorsport became a team affair with backing from garages keen to sell cars, tyres and oil. It also saw the rise of the professional racing driver, of whom perhaps the best known was Englishman Stirling Moss. In 1955, a horror crash killed over 80 people and led to the retirement of Mercedes-Benz from racing and the banning of motorsport in several countries. To this day, Switzerland does not allow motor racing inside its borders. In fact, Le Mans is famous for things other than motorsport. King Henry II of England was born there in 1133, as was tennis player Joe Wilfred Tsonga and racing driver Sébastien Bourdais, rather more recently. The traditional Le Mans start was altered for 1970. Cars were still lined up along the pit wall, but the drivers were already inside and strapped in. At the fall of the French flag, the drivers started their engines and drove away. However, in 1971, this method was done away with, and a rolling start has been used ever since. The race has always been popular with manufacturers. Here, the distinctive finned D-type Jaguars do battle with Aston Martins. For years, Italy's Ferraris battled with Germany's Porsche for overall victory at Le Mans, as a win meant a great deal in dealers' showrooms. Win on Sunday, sell on Monday. Increasingly, it was specialist-built racing cars that were winning over modified road cars, and the difference in speed between them increasingly became a safety issue. The track itself was widened and modernised, but for decades the daunting Mulsanne Straight remained, a long, straight, flat road where cars built up awesome speeds. Realising the publicity value gained on the racetrack, Ford had long gone racing, but they'd never taken on Le Mans with any seriousness. Knowing that the easiest and quickest way to win was to buy the winners, Ford tried to buy Enzo Ferrari's small Italian company, which had won at Le Mans from 1960 to 65, but the Italian turned down Ford's approaches. This so annoyed Henry Ford II that he directed his engineers to find a company capable of building a Ferrari beater. English racing car builder Lola was chosen, and they had already built a car using a Ford engine. Thus was born the GT40, so called because it was just 40 inches high. With a very large budget and constant development, the car went from 0 to hero in just 2 years, winning Le Mans in 1966, 67, 68 and 69, this being the year when Jackie Ickx refused to run to the start. Originally, Le Mans race results were decided by distance. The car which covered the greatest distance was the winner. This rule upset the Ford team's plans in 1966. With a dominant 1-2 lead, the two cars slowed for a photo opportunity at the finish, with Denny Holmes slightly ahead of fellow New Zealander Bruce McLaren. However, as McLaren's car had started much further back on the grid, it had covered the furthest distance over the 24 hours. With a margin of victory of 8 metres, McLaren and co-driver Chris Hammond were declared the winners. This distance rule was later changed with the use of the rolling start. In the 1970s, the amateur races had all but disappeared, as the factories built special cars that only raced at Le Mans and 3 or 4 other endurance races around the world. These were big, fast, immensely powerful cars, and they shared the track with what looked like regular sedans, which were really heavily modified pure racers too. In the late 1970s, the demand for fuel economy around the world led the race to adopt a fuel economy formula known as Group C, in which competitors were given a set amount of fuel, for which they had to design an engine. Abandoned when teams were able to master the fuel formulas, fuel economy was important as some teams tried to save the time spent during pit stops. The race runs through the night, and while a few hardy fans stay trackside and awake right through the night, teams of 3 drivers take turns to keep their cars circulating. Modern racing cars are a long way from the home-built jalopies of yesteryear. In fact, they often have more in common with aircraft, and even spacecraft, than they do with common road cars. Some technologies were developed for use in spacecraft in an endurance racing car. The priorities were security, reliability and performance. Ransom is responsible for technology transfer at the European Space Research and Technology Centre in the Netherlands.
When we want to send something into space, we immediately think of miniaturization, durability and reliability. Every kilo we send into space costs 100,000 euros, so it had better work when it gets there.
In 2 years, the partnership between race and space technology shaved 38 kilograms off the car. This is a huge gain in the top class of racing. Reliability and safety have also been improved.
A racing car is a complex technical assembly using many novel ideas. And for it to be competitive, you need to use not only resistant lightweight materials, but you often have to deal with thermal loads that are similar to those found in space. These are carbon parts. Traditionally, they were made from aluminium, but by using composites, we save half the weight, and they are twice as stiff. There's also vital heat insulation. Here it's between the motor and the fuel tank, only 6 millimeters thick, and it provides nearly 90% heat resistance.
Another similarity between motorsport and space exploration is the quest to go faster and further for longer. Most recently, diesel engines have powered the winners of Le Mans. Once the sole preserve of snowy, slow commercial vehicle trucks and trains, diesel power has not only become green, it's become powerful, hence fast. Audi built raced and won with a diesel to showcase their road car technology. Better consumption meant lighter fuel loads and less refueling stops. But drivers had to get used to the new, low-revving, quieter and very powerful engines.
It's a great challenge Audi has given us. A brand new car, long wheelbase, big, nice engine, 12-cylinder, 5.5 liter diesel, and obviously this is a new challenge for us as driver. We have a lot of power, and to get it good drivable, it takes a lot of optimizing in the diesel and have everything to work in the right way. And it's a great challenge, and as a driver, we look forward.
Scored a debut win at Le Mans in 2006, only diesels, first from Audi and then from Peugeot, have won the great race, completing more laps and at higher speeds than ever before. At about the same time that the Le Mans race was established in France, German enthusiasts were racing in the area around the Eiffel Mountains. This soon was considered impractical and dangerous, so to provide work and attract tourists to the area, the construction of a dedicated racetrack was begun in September 1925, and the track was completed in the spring of 1927. The old track, known simply as The Ring by enthusiasts and nicknamed The Green Hell by Jackie Stewart, is widely considered to be the toughest, most dangerous and most demanding purpose-built racetrack in the world. The original Nürburgring was built to showcase German automotive engineering and racing talent and provided jobs for about 3,000 unemployed men. Originally, the track featured 4 different sections. The 28.3 kilometre long whole course, which included the 22.6 kilometre northern loop and the 7.7 kilometre southern loop. And there was also a 2.2 kilometre warm-up loop. Because of its length, marshalling was difficult, but it was one of the first purpose-built circuits to have its own telephone system, linking all parts of the track with race control. The track played a major part in the domination of interwar racing by German teams Auto Union and Mercedes, and drivers like Rudi Caracciola, Bernd Rossemeyer and Manfred von Brautich. Motorsport featured highly in Nazi propaganda, but few drivers or teams embraced the attitudes of the government. After the Second World War, the track was used again for racing. By the start of the new Formula One World Championship in 1950, the top drivers were men like Alberto Ascari, the 3 Fs, Fangio, Farina and Fagioli, and the emerging talent of a young Englishman, Sterling Moss. The track was used for endurance racing too. Many of the cars from Le Mans would race for 1,000 kilometres round the Nürburgring, including the Ferraris, Fords and Porsche factory teams. They even used the Le Mans start. But as racing cars, including Formula One cars, got faster and faster, the inherent dangers of the long and demanding track became more obvious, and the old track held its last Grand Prix in 1976, when Niki Lauda nearly died in his burning Ferrari. Instead, a new Grand Prix track was built and opened in 1984, shorter with better visibility for fans and better access for emergency service workers. The first event held there was a Mercedes race, won by the great Ayrton Senna. Many different types of racing are held there, including cars, bikes and even trucks. It might not be as spectacular as the old track, but it is a lot safer. And the old track still exists, and drivers and riders can take their own vehicles out and travel on the wheel tracks of the glorious ghosts of racing's golden age. Motorsport's earliest days, there were many national and international championships, but there was no true world championship. Soon, calendars of racing emerged in some countries or regions, racing for a single trophy or award. Some of these were lavish and financially very generous, as sponsors sought to have their names associated with this newfangled, exotic and plainly very dangerous sport. The most lavish and rewarding were called Grand Prix, literally big prize. Gradually, championships for similar types or sizes of car emerged, and races at tracks across Europe became annual events. Formula One was a new championship agreed after World War II. Several organisations had laid out rules for a world championship before the war, but with racing halted by the conflict, the World Drivers' Championship was not formalised until 1947. The first World Championship race was held at Silverstone in England in 1950. A championship for constructors followed in 1958. The first Formula One World Championship was won by Italian Giuseppe Farina in his Alfa Romeo, barely defeating his Argentine teammate Juan Manuel Fangio. Fangio won the title in 1951, 54, 55, 56 and 57. His record of 5 World Championship titles stood for 45 years, until Michael Schumacher took his 6th title in 2003. Although Sterling Moss was a regular front-runner, he was never able to win the World Championship. He was now widely considered to be the greatest driver never to have won the title. Fangio, however, is remembered for dominating Formula One's first decade and has long been considered the Grand Master of Formula One. Stops on the Formula One calendar of events was, and still is, Monaco. The race is on the tight and twisty streets and is an entirely inappropriate place for racing extremely fast cars, yet the race is a film fixture and a fan favourite. Here Jackie Stewart is presented with the winner's laurels by Prince Rainier of Monaco. Sportsman Stewart, himself a 3 times world champion, worked hard on improving driver safety after a string of fatal accidents in Formula One in the 1960s and 70s. Racing engineers have made cars so fast that a knowledge of the science of aerodynamics, previously only applied to aircraft, became vital. Small aerofoils on the front and back of each car are effectively upside-down wings, their job to force the car onto the track for better grip in corners. Formula One travels to exotic locations and attracts top drivers from around the world. Brazilian 3-time world champion Nelson Piquet retired army in South Africa. National championships existed in South Africa and the UK in the 1960s and 70s, but due to rising costs, they died out. Modern F1 cars are very quick and subject their athlete drivers to huge forces during cornering, braking and accelerating.
In modern days, I think it's closed up a lot because of the enormous adhesion of the tyre. I think that because you've now got lateral G up to 3 or 4, in my day it was probably around 0.8 or 9, I think when it's much lower, the driver has much more input, if you like, than he's able to show now. Not because he was greater necessarily then, but I think that the way the picture he could paint was much freer for him. It's a totally different sport. I mean, I can remember the time when brakes were so bad that if you put the brakes on really hard, you had to wait until they cooled off. I mean, seriously, it was really quite a big bad thing with drum brakes, even the better ones. And then we used to get things like fading dampers, so that the damping wasn't as good, and so the car's road holding would go off, and you had to contour the tyres down, and all sorts of different things we had to face, which of course they don't face now. They have a lot of other problems. So although the sport is different, what you're trying to do is the same thing. You're trying to take a car that is designed to do something and make it do more than I won't say more than it's designed to do, but more than one would expect it to do. You are driving on the limit, and motor racing is 10/10ths. And to do 10/10ths in any year is exactly the same as any other year, except the ground rules have changed a bit, but it's still the same thing.
In 1969, Graham Hill's Lotus team was paid to paint its car in a commercial company's colours and logo. Since then, the sponsorship of racing cars as advertising billboards has reached dizzying sums of money, which has permitted higher technology and higher salaries. Tobacco advertising powered Formula One for 30 years, but gradually national bans on prominent advertising killed off this rich source of revenue. Beginning in the 1970s, Bernie Ecclestone rearranged the management of Formula One's commercial rights. He's widely credited with transforming the sport into the billion-dollar business it is today. Technical regulations are reviewed every few years, and usually rule changes seek to slow the cars down, enhance driver safety, and curtail costs. This is done by making wings, tyres, and even engines smaller, by requiring the tyres, engines, and gearboxes to last longer, and by restricting the amount of electronic assistance the driver can get from onboard computers. Speed control, launch and traction control, and even computerized suspension systems were introduced to find critical split seconds, and were soon banned by new rules. The system of recovering and storing energy from using the brakes gave some cars a big power advantage at the expense of extra weight. But still, the team's engineers will find ways of making their cars faster and faster, so rules get altered again. It's what drives the never-ending evolution of the world's top class of motorsport. But it wasn't just in the major countries that motor racing was gaining a strong following. On the tiny Isle of Man, nowadays more famous for its annual motorcycle racing festival, car races were held from the very earliest days of the sport. One of motorsport's enduring enigmas was Prince Bira, a real live prince from Siam, now known as Thailand. He raced at the top level either side of the Second World War and was a wealthy amateur who was also extremely talented. Prince Bira never took the throne and died alone and unknown on the platform of a London Underground station.
For the first time, the British Empire Trophy race, watched by the Lieutenant Governor of the Isle of Man, was for sports cars only. 25 competitors in the handicap, and the starters' flag sends them off over 136 testing miles. The 4-mile course, in and around Douglas, has to be negotiated 35 times. Yes, those bends are pretty tricky till you get used to them. Then all you have to worry about is your place in the handicap. Or is it? This is one time when you ignore the highway code, you'll put your foot down and keep it there. With cars flashing around like this, it's no wonder the island's cats have no tails. Winner was 21-year-old Sterling Moss, driving a Fraser Nash at an average of 67 miles an hour. A sterling performance from the Moss who gathered the Empire Trophy.
Mercedes up to the starting point of perhaps the greatest international road race of them all, the Mille Miglia. Another Mercedes in the German team with English ace Sterling Moss at the wheel. And the third is driven by Carl Kling. Ahead of them are 1,000 miles of some of the toughest racing in the world right across Italy. And here comes Moss, well out in front with the leaders. And Fangio is there too, followed by Italian Umberto Maglioli in a Ferrari. At the finish, just over 10 hours later, it's Moss who crosses the line to win in record time. Fangio comes second and Maglioli third, making Moss the first British driver ever to win this famous race. Flying home to England after his great victory, Moss arrives at Lydd Airport to find that the news has gone ahead of him. An eager British press is there to greet him, and so are a very proud mother and father. With him, Moss brings a victory gift from the German firm for whom he won, a new Mercedes 220. A happy homecoming for the 25-year-old racing driver who experts predict is a future world champion.
was held 24 times between 1927 and 1957 from Brescia to Rome and back on a figure-eight shaped course of roughly 1,500 kilometres. Later races followed 12 other routes with varying total lengths. 1953 until 57, the Mille Miglia was also a round of the World Sports Car Championship. Some drivers, such as Mons, relied on navigators, while Fangio preferred to drive alone. He considered road racing dangerous since his co-pilot was killed in South America. Mons and his navigator, motoring journalist Dennis Jenkinson, ran 6 reconnaissance laps beforehand, enabling Jenks to make notes on a roll of paper 15 feet long that he read and gave directions to Mons during the race with a system of hand signals. This was the beginning of a system of pace notes used in rallying to this day. The race was banned after the fatal crash of a 4.2-litre Ferrari in 1957 that killed the Spanish driver Alfonso, Marquis of Cortago, his navigator Edmund Nelson, and 13 spectators. From 1958 to 61, the event resumed as a rallying-like round trip at legal speeds, with a few special stages driven at full speed, but this was discontinued after just 3 years. Since 1977, the event was revived as a parade for pre-57 cars, run over several days, and since 1982 was revived as a road rally event. Timing rather than speed is of the essence for the enthusiasts from around the world who race their vintage cars dating from 1927 to 57. This parade of classic machines has earned the modern Mille Miglia the reputation of being the most beautiful road race in the world. Every May, Brescia is the meeting place for the rich, famous and passionate of the motoring world as they cruise over 1,000 miles of Italian roads. The event's history is traced from the very beginning to the present day at the Mille Miglia Museum in Brescia. Sterling Moss has been reunited with his winning Mercedes on several occasions and at several different events over the last 50 years, although the venerable Englishman has declared that both of them now deserve a comfortable retirement. A much older road race was the Targa Florio, created in 1906 by the wealthy pioneer racing driver and automobile enthusiast Vincenzo Florio, who had started the Coppa Florio race in 1900. Always one of the toughest competitions in Europe, the first Targa Florio covered 277 miles of treacherous Sicilian mountain roads at heights where severe changes in climate often occurred. By the mid-1920s, the Targa Florio had become one of Europe's most important races, as neither the 24-hour of Le Mans nor the Mille Miglia had yet been established, and Grand Prix races were still isolated events, not a series like today's F1. In 1926, Eliska Junkova, one of the greatest female drivers in history, became the first woman to ever compete in the race. In 1955, the Targa became part of the new FIA World Sports Car Championship. Mercedes had to win 1-2 to beat Ferrari for the title, having missed the first 2 of the 6 events. Sterling Moss and Peter Collins beat Fangio and Kling to win the title. Over the years, many of the greats of Grand Prix racing, such as Fangio, Moss and Belgian Olivier Gendebien, took on Italian champions such as Tozzo Nuvolari, Michele Varzi and local hero Nino Vaccarella. The racing cars were started one by one every 2 minutes for a time trial, as a start from a full grid was not possible on the tight and twisty roads. Helmut Marko set a lap record in 1972 in an Alfa Romeo at 33 minutes 41 seconds, or an average of 79.6 miles an hour. to the long track, drivers practiced in the week before the race in public traffic, often with their race cars fitted with license plates. Porsche factory drivers even had to watch onboard videos, a sickening experience for some. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, hugely powerful cars such as Vaccarella's Ferrari 512 raced through small mountain villages, while the people were sitting or standing right next to or even on the road. Porsche, on the other hand, did not race its big Porsche 917, but rather the nimble Porsche 908 Spiders. Due to safety concerns, the last real Targa Florio was an international professional race run in 1973. The Targa was continued as a national event for some years, before a fatal crash sealed its fate in 1977. Like the Mille Miglia, since then it's been run as a rallying event. The Monte Carlo Rally is organised each year by the Automobile Club de Monaco, who also organise the Formula One Monaco Grand Prix. Since its inception in 1911 by Prince Albert I, the rally has drawn competitors from all over Europe and takes place along the French Riviera and into the foothills of the Alps. Many teams like to get to the warmer climate for the rally, held in January, except that in the mountains there was often thick snow. As recently as 1991, competitors were able to choose their starting points from approximately 5 venues, roughly equidistant from Monte Carlo itself. With often varying conditions at each starting point, usually involving dry tarmac, wet tarmac, snow and ice, sometimes all in a single stage of the rally, tyre choice was important, as a driver has to balance the need for grip on ice and snow with the need for grip on dry tarmac. By the 1960s, the era of amateur rally drivers was coming to an end, with more and more works teams now entering the Monte. For 1964, the ultra-powerful Ford Falcons were matched by the Mercedes-Benz 300 SE, and Citroën entered no less than 4 DS19s. But in terms of sheer numbers, everyone still lagged behind the British contingent, registering a works team of 6 Minis, with 24 more Minis being raced by private teams. Starting at Minsk, one of 9 different starting venues in the rally that year, Paddy Hopkirk and Henry Lydon drove their Mini Cooper S to victory. Minis dutifully won again the next year, but the 1966 Monte Carlo rally ended in uproar after the winning Minis in the top 4 places were disqualified on a technicality. They were all ruled out of the results, along with 6 other British cars, for alleged infringements of complex regulations about the way their headlights dipped. The official winner was announced as Pauli Toivonen, a Finn living in Paris, driving a Citroën, who previously finished 5th. The Mini success story continued even further. In the 1967 rally, Rauno Aaltonen and Lydon made it a hat-trick of victories for the Mini team. But for some dubious decisions the previous year, it would have been 4 out of 4. Years later, the Finn was reunited with his car.
It was different from the cars of today. The car was smaller, it had 10-inch tiny little wheels, the car was very light. It means that it was extremely handy. We could throw the car nearly in any angle, it would fit on the narrow passages easily, but you had to be careful because it was bouncy. It didn't stick to the road as the cars of today will do.
As the cars became faster, so techniques evolved to get them round the course more quickly. One is called the Finnish flick and was perfected by drivers like Bjorn Valdegaard in the tail-heavy Porsches as a way of getting the car to change direction quickly. The spectacular tail-out technique is much to the delight of fans who spend freezing hours on the course to catch a glimpse of their heroes. Into the 21st century, the world of rallying has evolved and teams no longer have to drive great distances to the event. Now the Monte Carlo is a 3-day rally with timed special stages run on closed roads, though much of the course in the mountains uses the same routes as competitors did nearly a century ago. Like much of the rest of the motorsporting world, rallying has seen the rise of professional drivers in factory-prepared cars, backed by teams with multi-million-dollar budgets. Toyota, Ford, Mitsubishi, Subaru, Peugeot and Citroën have all claimed the world title. And Citroën's French ace Sébastien Loeb set new records for everything, including 5 Monte Carlo wins and 6 consecutive world titles. The new cars may look like showroom standard models, but in reality they're handcrafted, high-performance, 4-wheel drive weapons. And then there are the ultra-long distance marathon rallies, sadly now a relative rarity because so many countries are sealed or unsafe. But it wasn't always so, and in 1968, 98 cars left London to drive 10,000 miles, half around the world, to Sydney, Australia. A second event was organised in 1977, and a third in 1993 to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the original. 2 further rallies have subsequently been contested in 2000 and 2004. The original route took the teams through France, Italy, Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan and India, with a 3,000-mile lap of Australia. 14 nationalities were in the convoy, and 18 of the cars were Australian, the teams all hoping to snare the £10,000 first prize. The intention was to complete the journey in 10 days, and one of the well-wishers at the start was Australian winner of the Miss World contest, Penny Plummer from Sydney. Once into France and leaving at 1-minute intervals, the 98 contestants sped off into the night towards Paris. An unexpected hazard on the road to Paris was thick fog, which at times reduced the cars to a walking pace. Ice and freezing fog continued to be a hazard on the early morning run to Turin. French customs decided to enforce currency export rules and checked all the crew's money at the Mont Blanc tunnel. There was an unexpected hazard in Turkey. Children throwing rocks at the cars, denting the bodywork and smashing windscreens. By the time the leading cars had reached Sivas, several competitors had dropped out. The first big killer stage was 170 miles of twisting mountain trail at night in driving sleet. Rally champion Roger Clark broke away from the rest of the field at an average speed of 60 miles an hour in his Lotus Cortina. The competitors had a break in Tehran before the longest stage of the marathon, the 1,500 miles stretch to Kabul through the Elbrus Mountains. First into Kabul was Australian Harry Firth in a Holden entered by the Sydney Telegraph newspaper. Only 33 cars arrived in time. Good tarmac road through the Khyber Pass into Pakistan presented few problems, and both Pakistan and India forgot their political differences, allowing competitors to cross the border that had been closed for the previous 3 years. After a 9-day voyage, Friday, December the 13th was unlucky for some, as Australian police booked 26 cars for mechanical defects and illegal equipment, such as sirens and flashing headlights. The hostility of Australian police to the event would continue throughout the rally. The leaders were booked by police for speeding and they threatened to impound the car. Clark broke a differential and, seeing a Cortina by the roadside, tried to buy the rear axle. The owner initially refused, but then said, "You're Roger Clark, the English driver, aren't you?" and parted with his rear axle. After an 80-minute delay while the axle was fitted, Clark was back in contention. The race was all but won by Bianchi and Ogier when, 156 kilometres from Sydney, with Ogier at the wheel and Bianchi dozing, their Citroën hit a Mini head-on in a section of road that was supposed to be closed to the public. The DS21 was wrecked and Bianchi was badly injured. Paddy Hopkirk threw away any chance of winning by stopping to help the injured and put out fires in the cars before turning around and going for help. It was rumoured the occupants of the Mini were two drunken off-duty policemen. That left Andrew Cowan to take victory quite by accident in his Hillman Hunter and claim the £10,000 first prize. Hopkirk finished second, while Aussie Ian Vaughan was third in a factory-entered Ford Falcon GT. And if that marathon rally sounded extreme, in 1907, 5 pioneering motorists shipped their cars to China in order to race half around the world in Paris, to prove the automobile could provide an independent means of travel. 4 of them made it, but the race was never held again, banned by Chinese authorities. But with a thaw in international relations and 90 years after it was first staged, the event was recreated. Drivers from 24 nations entered the new Peking to Paris race, crossing 3 deserts, 11 countries, and reaching the Mount Everest base camp. 96 vintage and classic cars lined up for the start of the first leg of the 16,000-kilometre rally. Everything from Porsches, MGs, Bugattis and Rolls-Royces to Citroën 2CVs and Morris Minors. It was the first ever rally to cross Tibet and the first to travel through Iran in 20 years. 2 hours after leaving Beijing, the cars passed the Great Wall of China. It took 4 years to organise the race. Those taking part each paid £25,000 in entrance fees. 84 of the cars arrived in the Indian city of New Delhi after completing a 3-day, 1,200-kilometre journey from the Himalayan city of Kathmandu.
I know every weld shop from here to Beijing. And today we're going to, we have a broken rear wheel. The electrical system went out, we lost the starter motor, and we'll try to get it fixed tonight.
The event was won by Britain's Phil Surtees and John Bayliss driving a 1942 Willys Jeep. Novelist Rosie Thomas took part and funded her team's car by writing a book called Border Crossing, detailing her rally experience. Several other rallies of varying seriousness between Europe and China have been held. In May 2005, 5 cars led by Lang Kidby departed Beijing for Paris, retracing the original route with very similar cars to the original. A Spiker, a 1907 and a 1912 de Dion Bouton, a 1907 Itala, and a Contal cycle car replica. Another event is planned for October 2010, with competitors from around the world driving cars ranging from a 1912 Ford Model T to a 1968 Mercedes.